In this interview, I talked to world-renowned yoga expert Shiva Rea, hailed by Vanity Fair as one of the world's greatest yoga masters. Now, she has taught many Hollywood celebrities, including Will Smith, Jada-Pinkett Smith, and Brosnan. Now, I was really excited to talk to Shiva. She's been teaching yoga to surfers for over a decade, and she's even created a DVD called Surf Yoga Soul. So I hope you enjoy the interview. Tell us the story of how you first discovered yoga.
Yes, so my father, who was an artist and a surfer, actually, and it was in 1967, he gave me my name Shiva, and it was really like a seed because in the mythology, Shiva is both where all of the yoga asanas originate from, as well as what's known as Raj, or the dance of Shiva. And so, not knowing, how this would affect me, my parents weren't necessarily yoga practitioners, although my mother did some yoga in Berkeley when my father was going to UC Berkeley, and it was in the 60s, and so there was definitely, it was 60s and early 70s in Berkeley, so there was definitely a lot of alternative consciousness that was part of my early years. But it wasn't until I was a teenager, and I was in the library Asian art section, and I found a book on yoga, and I found a book on Zen meditation, and I started to practice on my own from a book. And so I was 14, and I was living in Memphis, Tennessee at the time, and there was only one yoga class in the entire city, and it was on a Saturday, and it was above this health food store. And so I would ride my bike. I mean, I was pretty precocious. I had already traveled, by myself to Italy when I was 16, but I would ride my bike. It was pretty much an all-day experience, and ride my bike to this yoga class. I began like most people do, from a book, and then just, trying to find whatever neighborhood yoga class there was. And it's amazing how powerful those first experiences of yoga are, no matter what your introduction is. For me, it's, I don't know, it was like a key had been on, and it just, everything from that moment began to kind of flow, or you could say like the seed of my name got watered.
What's your number one insider secret then for improving health and fitness, something that people can take away and do right now?
I think the thing that people don't realize is that we have a lot of opportunities to engage ourselves, but we just don't take the opportunity. I mean, you can, if you're on the phone, like I do yoga all day long, like a cat. Like I actually don't practice as long in duration. I used to have like these 2.5-hour practices. I have so many passions, and I do a lot of writing now and, traveling. So I'm into kind of shorter practices, an hour or so, but all day long I'm doing yoga like a cat. Meaning if you're sitting, just get up and do, some shoulder stretches, or place your elbows against your desk. If you're talking on the phone, get into yogic squat, standing yogic squat. Be more like a cat and respond to your body all day long until it just becomes natural to you. And that really, I think, has a big difference just in terms of the cumulative effect, and then also into kind of like really responding to what you need in your body natural.
Can you debunk any common myths about yoga?
The funniest thing is that, yoga is just for women, because historically there have been, very powerful women teachers, but historically yoga in India has been mainly practiced by men. So this is a kind of strange reverse of roles. And in my classes in Venice, I actually have like pretty much half men and half women. So I think if men can get over this impression that yoga is for women, I think they'll experience a lot of benefit.
What are the most common mistakes that you see people making when they first start practicing yoga?
I think people aren't really used to really what it is to lead the flow of the practice with their breath. So people really usually bring too much effort to the whole experience. So it sometimes will sound like if you're practicing near to somebody who's new, like they're pushing their breath. I mean, you see it in advanced, say like athletes and artists, where it doesn't look like they're struggling. And it's not just that they're in shape for whatever they're doing. They actually understand how to use their energy efficiently.
So what can people expect to face when they first start practicing yoga in the first few weeks, and how long will it take for them to see any sort of improvement?
I would say it's like you've been worked out from head to toe. That's just to speak in very plain language. It depends on how toxic your lifestyle is, meaning, and I have no judgment upon this. I'm not trying to say this in any, I mean, it would be the same if you started running and you happen to enjoy drinking a lot, or if you've been eating, food that isn't really good for you. Yoga is detoxifying. So sometimes in the first few weeks, it depends on how intense a class you're going to and how many times a week you're going to. If you start going at least 3 times a week, you're going to start to notice the detoxifying effect of yoga, which is why you feel good. And in terms of actual seeing physical results in their body, it really depends from person to person. If someone's already athletic, they'll see changes from one class to the next to the next. The main thing has to do with frequency, like anything. And if you want the most progress, you need to not have more than a couple of days in between your practice. But if you can only go once a week, you can go once a week and enjoy yourself. It's really up to you.
Are there any other resources that you'd recommend people who first are starting to practice yoga check out?
Yeah, I think yogajournal.com. I think it's yogajournal.com or yjmag.com. They've really compiled amazing resources for beginners, and you can get just about any article that you have questions about, from the history of yoga to individual kind of issues, therapeutic issues. If you have sciatica or you have some, something going on with your health, if you just want to know what's happening in the yoga world worldwide, I think that's a pretty good resource.
So when you first started practicing yoga, what was the most important thing that you did then to make it a habit?
Yeah, I used to practice first thing in the morning, like just, that's it, and certainly it does help to go to classes in the beginning because it takes quite a bit of discipline to do it on your own at home. So, if at all possible, I think if you can start a morning practice, it's the most guaranteed time where you won't have interference. Sometimes if you say, oh yeah, I'm going to practice in the afternoon or in the evening, things can get in the way. So in general, first morning practice is a really great suggestion.
And what about breaking the habit? People sometimes, they start something and then they kind of fall off track. What's your advice for them to kind of get back on track again?
I think in this way, a class or a DVD is really helpful because it's something external to you, and you show up and you're there. Where I think if you just leave it up to yourself to kind of get remotivated again sometimes. So I really think, having a teacher in your life that you feel connected to so that you can, always drop in and that you're going to get that kind of ignited motivation again, I think is really, really helpful. Or a certain DVD that that you really connect to. I think this is helpful.
Excellent. Okay, and that's the final question. So thanks so much for sparing the time to speak to me today. So I really appreciate it, and you've done some amazing content there, and I know it's going to really inspire people.